I believe we are live. Hi, everyone. I'm just waiting on a few people just to get on before I get started and introduce myself to you guys. Um, let's see. I see someone in the comments. Hi, Chanel. I love this line. I need to restock. It really goes on flawlessly. Yes, it does. One of my favorite brands ever. I'm just waiting on people to kind of get on before I can get started. So we'll just wait a few more minutes before we get into the makeup and the fun stuff. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments. I will do my best to answer every question for you guys. I'm just waiting on a few more people. We'll just wait a little bit and then we'll go ahead and get started. And, hey, you're gorgeous. Thank you so much, Lizette. I hope I said your name right. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I do have some makeup on, so the focus today is going to be our eyes. And that's really what I want to focus on as far as giving you guys the best information that I can on eyeshadow and eyebrows as well. So just hang in tight. We'll get started in just a few more minutes. Let's see. Hi, Emily. How are you? I hope you guys are doing well. I hope everyone is hanging in and excited for today. I'm very excited to be on here with you guys. I guess I'll just kind of go ahead and get started. I'll introduce myself and then we will get into the makeup. So my name is Ghaida. I am a freelance makeup artist. I'm also an educator. I started my career back in New York, I want to say in 2007 or so. So I've been in the game for a long time. I'm a licensed cosmetologist as well. I do a lot of, I currently reside in Los Angeles. I do a lot of celebrity red carpet makeup, film, television productions. I also teach at a makeup school in Hollywood. I teach a 15-week course on getting certified. It teaches everyone how to get certified as a makeup artist. So that's just a little bit about my background. I do a lot of editorial, magazine shoots, things like that. So I do have a lot of knowledge. You guys can feel free to ask questions. And again, I will do my best to answer for you. So I'm going to just kind of get started with the makeup. I did do my base before I got on here. I have my foundation, which of course my favorite. I've gone through these bottles. This is just the best foundation. I've been using this. I usually don't finish a container of foundation. I don't go through them because I end up just kind of finding something else. This was the first foundation that I had to order again. And I did use the primer, the No Filter Poreless Base Primer under my makeup. And I also have on just everything else that I have on. I did put my mascara on before just because I looked a little crazy. And the mascara that I use is the Icon Mascara from Il Makiage. Off the chain, one of the best mascaras you guys will find on the market. It is buildable and it doesn't like flake or anything. It doesn't wear heavy on the eyes. So that's just a little bit of what I have on. I'm going to go ahead and get started with the rest of the face. The first thing I want to start with is the eyebrows. For those of you who have fuller eyebrows or have no eyebrows, I'm going to teach you guys something called the golden ratio and just kind of how to go off of that using your brow pencil and how to fill in the brows perfectly so that you don't have, the chunky eyebrows or whatever the case may be. And I also like to start with brows first for the most part. Sometimes I do foundation and then I'll do my brows at the end. It just depends on how I'm feeling. There's no right or wrong in makeup as long as you get the results that you want, however you achieve it. It's up to you. So what I like to do is I like to take a spoolie. Sorry, I'm just grabbing my mirror. I like to take a spoolie and brush the brows upward. The reason I do this is because it gives you kind of just an idea where you want to start your base. So what I like to first do is take the spoolie and brush upward. And once I brush my brows upward, you can see that it just kind of gives you an idea of where you need to fill in, what you need to fill in, and if anything doesn't need to be filled in. And then for the tail of the brow, I'm sorry, I'm just moving my hair out of the way. I like to brush the hairs downward just because it gives you an idea of where you want to create your arch. So once I got the brows brushed and ready to go, the golden ratio, long story short, I'm not going to get into like a crazy lesson with math and science and whatever, but the golden ratio basically is just kind of like when you're doing something, doing it with symmetry and how to gauge using like the facial structure and things like that. My favorite way to do this is to just take either my brow pencil or just the brush or the spoolie that I'm using. And you want to use the nostril and you want to bring the brush, the tail of the brush, right up to where the tip of your brow starts. And this is kind of your guide. This is where your brow should start, right? So for most people, when you're first getting started with brows, you always want to just kind of create a guide. So we're talking right about here. So this is where my brow should start. The second part is your arch, where you want your arch to be and where the tail should be. So you want to take the brush or whatever it is that you use, and just from your nostril straight across, straight ahead and across your pupil, and that's where you want your arch to be. So I'm just going to leave a little mark right up here, and that's where my arch is going to sit. And then for the tail, what you want to do is, again, same thing, using your nostril as your guide, the outer corner of your eye, and this is where the tail should land. So I'm just going to leave a little mark here. And I just want to talk to you guys a little bit about the pencil. This one is from the Brand Maquillage, of course, and it's the shade Espresso. It's the brow pen. I love this pen because it's not like other ones. I've tried different brands where you either get a shiny brow or it's too waxy. The nice thing about this is that it makes my brows look fluffier. It's almost like, I want to say, like a cream powder finish, in my opinion, and it just wears really nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start with creating a base under here. I want to just kind of create that nice little fullness in the under and then build on top. So I'm going to take my brow pencil and go into the little sparse areas and just start to do little strokes. And the one thing that I want to kind of just tell you guys, the way you hold your brush or your product, whatever it is, really does help. So I like to rest my pinky, and just, it gives my hand more stability. So just resting the pinky on the inside of my eye, and again, just creating that base for myself to build on. And again, little strokes. You don't need to do long, you don't need to draw lines or anything like that. Just little strokes and build on it. And then once you have that base, you can start to fill in the rest of the brows, and you can automatically see how just creating that little bit of a guide already gave me a fuller brow. So again, I'm going to go in to the front here, and I'm just going to create little hair-like strokes. And I'm just doing very lightly, nothing heavy. And I'm going to go into the brow, and I'm just going to work opposite the hairs. This is a little trick that I typically like to do when I'm doing, whether it's my brows or clients, is going against the hairs. What happens is that your pen will deposit a little bit of color, but it won't look like it's sharpied on, if that makes sense. So the hairs kind of prevent it from really marking and making it look heavy. So it almost just creates a shadow for you. And so I go in between the hairs, and I just work opposite direction of the hairs itself. So like so. And then the spoolie is your best friend because it's going to help spread the product through the hair. And then once I have it enough filled in, I'm going to go in and just work on the arch. So I'm going to connect right in here. Sorry, I went a little too high. So I'm just going to start to build up on top of the brow and just make sure my arch is where it needs to be. You have such good brows. Thank you. Her skin is so pretty. Thank you, guys. Again, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. And if I'm going too fast or rambling, please stop me. I have no problem slowing down. And again, so just filling the brows in, and I'm going, this time for the tail, I'm going with the direction of the hair, and just making it blend in properly. So again, just finishing up the brow like so. And just filling in where you need. You don't need to overdraw your brows if they don't need to be filled in. I like to just keep, just that natural base that I have, and then fill in and work on it. So again, I just want to fix the front a little bit, and I'm just going to create little hair-like strokes with my brow pen, like so. And you guys can see the difference between this brow and this brow. So just take your time. My advice to people is always practice when it comes to eyebrows. Like, brows can be very difficult, but once you master your brows and once you master how to do them, it just it doesn't take that long. A lot of people tell me, oh, I spend 30 minutes on my eyebrows. I don't spend a long time just because I've mastered my face. And I use that trick where just create a guide and, go off of that. This is going to sound silly, but where are the brows supposed to begin? And no one can tell me. Your brows look pretty to start. I prefer have natural looking brows. Most people brows are too filled for me. Yeah. How do you pick the right color for your brows? So I'm going to start with the first question. I don't know if you were watching earlier, but I was kind of speaking of the golden ratio and the best way to figure out where your brows should go. For them to start, you want to take the inside of your nostril and I just use the pencil and bring it right in here. And this is where your brow should start. When it comes to the arch, you want to take it against your nostril and then look straight ahead using your pupil going across. This is where your arch should be. And then bringing it out to the outer corner, this is where your tail should end. Once you mark these 3 locations on your brow, you want to create that base under and then just slowly start to build on it. If you already have good brows, or if you're more full on the front, just work on the tail. Always focus on where the hair is missing. Let's see. Next question. Your brows are pretty to start with. How do you pick the right color for your brows? What brow color do you use? Okay, that's always a good question. Just because I get a lot of students from the school that I teach, are just students in general asking people in general, what color should your eyebrows be? For the longest time, I used to do black eyebrows. I have naturally dark hair. I have naturally black hair. There's nothing wrong with doing black eyebrows, but it can come off a little too harsh. So I always recommend for people with darker hair, you want to do a shade lighter. So like a dark brown. This is the shade Espresso. It wears really nicely. It doesn't look intense. For someone with blonde hair, you want to go a shade darker, just because if you're going with a blonde pencil, you're not going to be able to see your brow. So you want a little bit of a statement out there. So that's kind of how you gauge it. Sometimes it could be a shade or 2 shades darker, or a shade or 2 shades lighter. But always go, if you have dark black hair or brown hair, always go with a shade similar to your actual hair, but just one up, one lighter. And if your hair is light, you want to go with a shade darker, just so that you can see the brows on the face. What brow color do you use? This is the shade Espresso from Il Makiage. I love this pencil, and the color is really nice, and I like the way it wears, so you guys can see. I'm going to finish up the next brow here, and you guys can keep the questions coming. I don't mind answering anything, as long as, it's something that I can answer for you guys, and I'll do my best to explain everything. So again, same thing with this brow here. I'm going to do this one just kind of freehand it, not using the guide that I gave you guys, and you guys can just kind of follow along and watch. So you can see here, I brush the brows upward, and I'm just going to start by creating my guide under here. And you guys can see, once you have a little bit of a base to work off of, it honestly makes a world's difference. It makes everything easier for you to build off of. And I like to just bring this forward like that, because I'm going to start my brow where it needs to start. And again, just building that tail. Hello all, hi, how are you? And again, we're going to go in and fill in the brow. And like I said earlier, I like to go against the brow hairs in the direction opposite, just because what happens is it creates that little bit of a shadow rather than giving me like Sharpie brows, if that makes sense. And then we're going to create our arch. And please keep in mind, eyebrows are not twins, they are sisters. They can be cousins too, but I say more like sisters. They don't always have to be perfect or even, as long as they look, close enough to each other. But I always tell people they're not twins, they're sisters. And then just finishing up in here. I did make this one a little thicker, but I'm going to clean it up. And I am going to show you guys how I clean up the brows, just because cleaning them up is really what makes a huge difference. When you clean them up, it shows the shape a little bit more. And I usually just use my fingers. I don't care to use like a sponge or a wipe or anything. And then I clean them up after with foundation or concealer. Same thing on here. And if you get a little messy with the brows and they end up everywhere, don't even trip, because you're going to clean them up after, so it's not a big deal. So this one's a little more arched. I'm going to fill in a little bit on the bottom. So once I get the brows on, I like to see, but I also do have this like natural gesture where I just lift my brows. And so I'm going to just fill in just a little bit in here just to even it out more, and bring this one down a little. And I'm just going to clean up that bottom part just to make them match. So like so. Okay, that's a little better. And then I'm going to put this down, and I'm just going to grab So the one thing that I like to teach people when you're cleaning up your brows, I'm sure you guys see everywhere. I always thought it was weird that my brows are totally different from each other. That's normal. My brows are different. My eyes are different from each other. Not one side of your face is the same. If you look at a lot of people when they get fillers and things like that, it's all about symmetry and finding that balance in the face. Because one side, droops more, droops down more than the other. My understanding, yeah, and it's common and that's normal. But you see, with mine, they're not even perfect, but they're close. They're close to each other. So I'm gonna take my concealer and I'm just going to use a little bit on the back of my hand with a concealer brush. And what I like to do is I like to clean up under the brows with concealer and then take that concealer as my brow base. The one thing that I like to tell people when it comes to cleaning up the top of the brows, don't use concealer. Not that it's wrong or not, but sometimes if you notice, a lot of people tell me that, oh, when I use concealer to clean up above my brows, I get these 2 white spots in pictures. Concealer, it highlights and accentuates. So what you want to do is you want to use your foundation. And again, there is no right or wrong as long as you achieve the look that you're trying to get. But this is just a recommendation, and I do this a lot with a lot of my clients just because when they're on the red carpets and being photographed with lighting, if anything reflects, I don't want them to have those 2 white spots on their forehead, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to take my concealer with a concealer brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick some up off the back of my hand, and I'm going to go right in under the brow in here, and I'm going to start to just kind of clean it up to make it even. So right in here, and I just take my time. You want to do just little strokes with the brush. You don't have to go all the way across. If you smear it all the way across, it can come out messy. So just take your time with it and clean it up like so. And you see how I was telling you, don't worry about getting messy and getting a little bit under because you can clean it up after anyways. So, and I just like to take whatever's left of the concealer on my brush, and you see how automatically it makes a world's difference once you just highlight a little bit under the brow. So like so, and I'm just cleaning this up. And then once I have an even, close to an even look for both brows, I'll bring the concealer down to the rest of my lid and use it as eyeshadow base. No question so far. So I'm going to take the same thing on this eye here, and we're going to clean up under. Like so. And I usually, whatever's left of the concealer on my brush is when I bring it forward. I don't want to overdo the concealer in the front of my eyebrows just because sometimes it runs a little bit, it just gets a little messy. So I just like to take whatever's left on my brush and bring it forward. Like so. Like that. And you guys can see how it automatically just adds that little bit of a highlight under the brows and it makes them pop. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a fluffy blending brush, and whatever concealer is left on the back of my hand, I'm just going to take it and work it into the brush. And I'm going to use it as eyeshadow base. So I'm just going to go over here and just tap it on with the brush. I like to use a fluffy brush just because it disperses the product evenly and it gives a nice finish. It doesn't sit on the eyelid and get cakey, and that kind of prevents your creasing. So I just take a little bit of my concealer and bring it all over the lid. And I'm going to put a little bit more concealer just because I finished whatever was on my hand. What kind of brush is that called that you're using to clean up the brow? That's a concealer brush. So it's a flat concealer brush, and the bristles are synthetic. A little lesson on brushes, if you guys are looking to start using different brushes, synthetic bristles are for creams, natural bristles are for powders. So when you're using a synthetic brush, it's typically for foundation, concealer, or any cream products. So I'm just taking a little bit more of the concealer and I'm just applying it on to the lid. And sometimes, I'll be honest, I go in with a second layer if I'm doing like bright colors. And that's what's nice about the concealer and the foundation as well. You can layer it on. Do you use primer for your eyes? I get really oily eyelids and my eyeshadows crease a lot. I use concealer. I have very dry skin. My eyelids do get really oily. There's several different like primers that I've tried that weren't good, to be honest. This concealer has not let me down as an eyeshadow base just because it's almost like self-setting and it helps from creasing. So even with oily eyelids, my eyelids do get like really, really shiny at times. And with the concealer, it doesn't really crease for me. It's been working really well. I don't use anything else. And as you can tell, I just kind of blend it in. And sometimes I even just wear it on its own on my eyelids with just a little bit like of a liner or something. It looks really pretty. But yeah, I would definitely recommend using the concealer. If you have it, give it a try. I don't think you'd be disappointed, especially with greasy, like, oily eyelids. I get them all the time. My eyelids get really oily and nothing happens with this, with the concealer as my base. I'm going to be using this the Color Boss, Squad, sorry, um, uh, palette. You can tell that I use it a lot. It's probably my favorite, and this is my go-to for my everyday looks. And this is the shade number is Game Changer. So it has these 4 different colors in here. I'm going to go ahead and get started with the eyeshadow. What I like to use as my transition, I typically go for something that's similar to my skin tone or a little bit deeper. But the one thing that I've been using a lot is my Mineral Baked Bronzer, and this is in the shade Waka Waka. I use this on my face, and I also use it in the transition on my in my crease, just because it becomes cohesive with everything else on my face, and it wears really nicely through the lids. And I like to start with creating the transition, because everything else eventually kind of just blends in together. With eyeshadow, I always call it kind of like cake layers. Everything needs to blend. And so my biggest advice is usually, if you're blending, whatever color you used before, you always want to blend the color that you used after with, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go in with the bronzer, and once I apply a different shadow, I'll go back in with the color that I used prior to the second and blend it in, which is my bronzer, if that makes sense. You guys will see now as I explain. Another tip that I also like to give people is, when you're blending your eyeshadow, where you place your product is not where the product ends up, if that makes sense. So if you want your eyeshadow to be up here, you want to start a little bit lower, because as you blend, the product moves upward. So I'm going to show you guys quickly how I do that. So I'm just going to look down, and I want my eyeshadow to be up above here into the crease. So I'm placing it a little bit lower, and I'm just starting windshield wiper motion and bringing the brush back and forth. And as I go back and forth, you can see the product starts to move upward. And what this does is, you apply the transition, and it creates the dimension back into your eyelids. So again, same thing. And as I go, I add more. It's always easier to add product rather than having to remove it. So add it as you go. And you can see how I started, where my product ended up are 2 different places. So product placement is everything when you're doing your eyeshadow. Let's see. I thought I saw a question. So I'm just going to keep building up my bronzer into the crease, and I like to just kind of wing it out a little bit. What this does is just kind of pulls the eyes outwards, and it gives it a nicer shape. So same thing on here, and then out, and I'm going to do the same on the other eye as well. And you guys can see how it automatically brings back some definition into the eyelids. And I'm just going to take the bronzer here again. And the other thing that I forgot to mention is that with the concealer as my eyeshadow base, I never really set it. I've tried other concealers and they always crease on me. This one is just self-setting, so I don't really need to set it with any powders. I can just go straight in with my eyeshadow. And I'm just doing the same thing on this eye, and as I blend, I move upward and create the shape that I want. Like so. And again, I'm explaining all of this, so it might seem like it's a lot, but when you do it on your own, you'll see that it's just a very easy go-to look. And the same thing here, and just make sure both of the eyes are symmetrical. They don't have to be the same exact thing, because obviously sometimes this eye for me droops down more than this eye. So you want to just create that balance. So if you have to put the eyeshadow differently on one eye to make it match the other eye, that's perfectly fine. And once I have these eyeshadows blended out, well, my bronzer, I'm just going to go in, and I'm going to take the darkest shade in the palette, which is called Newsflash, right over here. And I'm going to switch brushes. I'm going to take a packing brush. There's a difference in brushes. There's a blending brush, and then you have your packing brush. Packing brush it does what it says. It packs on the color, whereas blending blends your eyeshadow. And the reason why I'm taking a packing brush with this one is because I want to pack it onto the lid nicely, and have it, stand out more. So I'm just picking some up on the brush, and I'm just tapping it on closest to the lash line. As you can see, I'm just tapping it in. And the nice thing about these eyeshadows is that you don't really have fallout. That's why I have my foundation on first. I never do foundation first because I'm always worried about fallout, but these eyeshadows literally have no fallout, which is nice. And it looks a little dark and crazy right now for an everyday look, but I promise once we blend it out, you'll see it's just a nice subtle smoky eye. And I'm going to do the same thing on this other eye here. And I'm just packing it on. Like so. And then remember how I said when you apply one color, you always want to go back in with the color you used before. So what I'm going to do is once I'm done packing this on, I'm going to go in with my bronzer just to blend them out together. So I'm going to go back in with my bronzer and that blending brush that I used. And I'm just going to start blending away. I'm going to kind of go over both the shades, so the darker one and the lighter one, and I'm just going to start to blend them together. And you can open your eye and just keep it open so that way you can tuck the brush into the crease and have them blended in nicely. As you can see, just kind of, it's a subtle smoky eye. And just keep blending until you get it to where you want it to be. The smoky eye is very classic and it works on pretty much everyone. I love these colors. What's the palette called? This one is Game Changer. This one's probably my most used palette of everything that I have. You can tell I dig into it a lot just because it's like the perfect, like the colors are perfect and some of the shimmers are like the perfect amount of shimmer. I'm going to do the same thing on this eye and I'm just going to blend in to get rid of any of my harsh lines. And I'm just using a little bit of the bronzer just to soften this up and blend them in together. And again, I'm explaining, so literally it seems like it takes a long time, but with this look, it really isn't time consuming. You saw how simple it was. You literally just put on some bronzer and then you take a little eyeshadow and you blend it out. And then one of my favorite things to do is to add a little bit of this color here, which is the shade, I can't see because the palette, oh, it's Entourage. My palette is like scraped up because I use it so much, but this color right here, this lighter shade, what I like to do, this is a little trick that I do, I take a bullet brush like this, and I just pick some up, and I like to take my setting spray, this is the hydrating setting spray, and I just spray my brush just a little bit, and then I go in and I apply onto the inner corners. This just brightens up the inner corner and it opens up the eye. So I'm just going to take it and I'm just going to put it a little bit in here. And you guys see how it makes just a little bit of a difference. I mean, just a little bit makes a big difference in the eye look. And same thing on here. And it just opens up the eyes for me. Next, I'm going to go in with a smaller brush. This is just a small blending brush. And I'm going to take the bronzer. And I'm just going to finish off the lower lid. So just taking that small brush and with my bronzer, I'm just going to blend it, just blend the bronzer out into the lower lash and tie everything in together like so. Same thing on here. And just blend it out. And you can add more if you want it to be a little bit darker. If you want it not as dark, you can just keep it more subtle. And like so, you guys see how it just kind of completes the eye once you apply that little bit under. I love it. I don't like to leave my eye just, you know, with the eyeshadow on top without anything under. You always want to kind of close it off and complete it. So this is the eye. And you can see, you saw how simple it was. It wasn't difficult. It wasn't complicated. I literally just used two different colors on the eyelid, but it looks like it took me a long time to do. What I'm going to get into next is I'm going to go ahead and finish off the face for you guys. Like I said earlier in the video, I do have my foundation on already. I'm in the shade 105. This is the Woke Up Like This foundation. And the concealer that I used was this one right here. And then I did use the poreless, the no filter poreless base primer under my foundation. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to get into some bronzer. I'm going to show you guys how to get that little bit of a chisel in the cheek and enhance your cheekbones, and blush. My two favorite, I'm going to be honest with you guys, my two favorite products, not my favorite, I have other favorites, but these are just probably one of my most used, which is the Mineral Baked Blush and the Mineral Baked Bronzer. The bronzer that I'm using is in the shade Waka Waka, and I'm just going to take a brush, just a small fluffy brush for the face, and I'm going to go ahead and bronze the perimeter of the face. The one thing that I want to show you guys is when you are looking to contour, a lot of people sometimes either pull it down or pull it too high up onto their cheekbones. The reason you want to keep your bronzer just on the perimeter of the face and not bring it too far in or too far out is because when you're creating shadows on your face, you're bringing things back. You're almost hiding them. And when you're highlighting, you're bringing forward. So if you're going to go ahead and put, you know, bronzer further down, what that does is it draws attention into here and it pulls the face down. So I'm just going to take my brush and a little bit of the bronzer. And I always like to start right at the top of the ear, right in here, and just in circular motion and slowly start to bring it down. Everyone has a little bit of a natural indentation, some more than others, but the perfect way to kind of find your guide is to put the back of just the end of the brush, the tail of the brush, and bring it down. And you can see how it just kind of, that's where you want your bronzer to go, where that brush is tucked. So just taking my product, and I'm just going to go in little circular motions. And I'm just going to start to blend. And as I blend and less product is on the brush, I'll start to bring it downward. And then whatever's left, I usually take on to the perimeter and bring it up and around my face. And again, you can always add more product. It's a lot easier to do so than to have to take off product. So I always apply more as I go as needed. And I just want to kind of add a little bit more definition. So I did add a little bit more product. And you can see I'm just blending it onto the perimeter of the face, like so. And you guys can automatically tell the difference between this side and this side. And I'm going to do the same thing onto the other side. And again, starting right above my ear and just bringing it down and circular motions. So I'm just going to apply a little bit more and bringing it up and around the perimeter of the face. And you guys can tell how it just gives a little bit of it accentuates what I already have, that indentation that I have already naturally. And it's all preference. If you prefer a more defined look, then you can add a little bit more. And I just like to take a little bit just under the chin and behind the ear, and it just kind of enhances my jawline a little bit by creating that shadow. And just bringing it again, a little bit under, and like so. And then next I'm going to go in with my blush. I like to use a smaller blush, a smaller brush for the blush. I think this might be a highlighter brush just because I like to focus it onto my cheekbones and a little bit above my the ridge of my nose. And I always just kind of go into the blush and I pick some up and I build it up on my cheeks. I'm a blush lover. I don't know about you guys, but I love wearing blush and I love having like rosy cheeks. So I just kind of smile and I bring the blush back into the bronzer just so that they can blend in together nicely and not have any separation on the face. Same thing on this side here. And like I said, I build it up just because I like to be a little bit more flush. And another thing when it comes to your blush is typically the first product that kind of fades off on the face. So if you go in with a little bit of a heavier hand or just apply a little bit more than you want, it eventually ends up like fading out throughout the day. So same thing on here. And just blending it through. And then I'm going to take the rest and just kind of run it on top of my nose. this is just preference. I like a little sun-kissed moment. So I like to just take whatever's left on my brush and run it on top of the bridge of my nose. Do you guys have any questions so far? Because I feel like I've been talking pretty fast and just kind of rambling. So I don't want to, if you guys have any questions, I can just take a moment just to answer some of them for you guys. Okay, so I guess no questions so far. All right, so I'm gonna get back and just kind of take a look, and then now I want to clean up above my brows. I don't know why, but I do this last, just because sometimes when you blend in your, bronzer or whatever the case may be, you might just kind of get a little bit of like fallout or whatever it is. So I like to go in at the end, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my foundation and I'm just gonna put just a small drop on the back of my hand, and I'm gonna go in with my concealer brush that I used earlier. And I'm just going to pick up that foundation. Let's see here. And I'm just going to take some and clean up the top of the brow. And I always like to start with the tail. So right in here. Bring it down, and then whatever's left on the brush, just blend it away. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are probably questioning, how come I put concealer over what I already have, or foundation, what I already have on. I do have powder on the face as well, but the nice thing about the foundation that I've come to realize is that even if I want to touch up with a little bit more, I can add more even after setting it with powder. So some foundations you can do that, others you can't. It's rare that you can, just because it gets a little messy and starts to break. But with this foundation, I trust it enough that I can do that. So same thing on this eye here. And I'm just going to clean that up. And whatever's left, I'm going to bring forward. And I always like to go over the brows when I'm done with my eyeshadow and everything else, just because sometimes you can get a little messy and mess up the brows, or they can just kind of get a little powder in them, or whatever the case may be. So once I have them nice and cleaned up, I'm going to go back in with my brow pen. And I'm just going to go back over them a little bit more in just areas where I want, or maybe areas that I had cleaned up with concealer a little too high. And again, just very light-handedly going over. Do you guys have any questions? And then I'm going to go back in with the spoolie, and I like to just brush the brow hairs up. It just gives it a fluffier look. Same thing with this brow here. And then I'm going to take my hydrating setting spray as my final step. I like to spray the spray on last. I do a few pumps of spray when I get my foundation on and I blend everything in, just because it helps melt it in, especially for someone with dry skin. If you guys have dry skin, I love spraying my hydrating spray in between. It helps keep the skin fresh and hydrated. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the hydrating setting spray, and from a distance, I'm just going to spray on like so. And what I like to do is just take my sponge, and I just like to push everything in together. What this does is it just helps blend any powders or anything that I might have on, like so. And just tapping everything into place. And it gives the skin a nice finish, so it looks like second skin rather than just having a heavy layer on. And that's the look. Let me know if you guys have questions as far as any of the products that I use, or the eyeshadow, or any tips or tricks that you guys might want. And I hope that I was able to explain everything thoroughly. I try to do my best with explaining things. Does anybody have questions? Hi, how are you? Let's see. What's your favorite product for an everyday look? So for an everyday look, I can't really say one product, just because I have so many. The palette is probably my most used palette for everyday looks. It depends on what your style is. The one thing that I would recommend that I probably can't go a day without, even if I'm not wearing like a full face, is the Icon mascara. I just like once my lashes are plump and ready to go, I feel so much better automatically. That's the one product that I can't live without, that I take with me everywhere. The other thing would be the foundation. I can't express how much I love this foundation. I tried it before and like a long time ago, and I loved it. The reason being is because you can either wear it like a thin sheer layer, or you can build it up to a full coverage. So it depends on how you like to wear it. No matter how many layers I put on from it, people always compliment me on my skin. They're like, "Oh my God, your skin looks so good. Like your foundation looks so good. What is it?" But yeah, another product that I do use regularly that I don't necessarily wear like over foundation, I think I just wear on bare skin sometimes, is the Mineral Baked Blush, not blush, bronzer. And again, this one's in the shade Waka Waka. You can find the shade that suits you better. The reason why I like doing bronzer on my skin is because my face tends to be a lot lighter than the rest of my body. Or sometimes I just want to add a little definition to my face. So what I do is I take my bronzer, I run it through my eyelids, a little bit around my face, and then I just kind of put mascara on and call it a day. It doesn't like I don't have to wear a foundation or anything. Sometimes I just get away with the bronzer on my face. But yeah, I hope that was like I know I said a lot of different products, but I genuinely can't just choose one just because there's so many that I love. But I do recommend if you're an eyeshadow kind of girl, the quad, this one right here, is really good. And then as far as like mascara, the Icon mascara is my holy grail, and I can't like I don't do anything without wearing mascara. That's the one thing that I can't go without. Do you guys have any other questions that I might be able to answer for you? How did you choose the bronzer? Good question, actually. A lot of people do ask that. When it comes to your bronzer, you obviously want it to be a little bit warmer and darker than your foundation. So what I always recommend to people is you want to do at least 2 shades darker than your foundation, just because you get a lot more definition. As you can tell with this one, it's much darker than my actual skin tone. So for some people, if you like to be a little bit more subtle, then maybe 1 shade that's darker than your foundation, but typically you want to do 2 shades. When you're highlighting and contouring, or when you're creating definition in the face, your highlighter or whatever concealer under the eye should always be 2 shades lighter, and whatever you're contouring or bronzing with should be 2 shades darker. Is this like a set rule or anything? No, but this is just what kind of works for me and a lot of other artists, and it's just kind of like the way you go. Can you demo the Rico Nasty palettes? I do not have that with me, but it is a beautiful palette. I wish I did have it with me so that I can do that for you. But if you want to try it, I would definitely check it out. Let's see. What's a good concealer? Where did I? Right here. So this is the Fucking Flawless concealer. I love this concealer because it's self-setting. I do have lines under my eyes, and I do get, like I was saying earlier in the demo, that I do get a lot of like oiliness on my eyelids. I don't set this with anything. I use it as an eyeshadow base, and then I use it under my eyes. I naturally have really dark circles and a lot of hyperpigmentation. So I usually use this to cover up everything, and it works really well on my skin. I have fair skin, ordered from Il Makiage. It's a bit light. I can mix in another color, or will it separate on my face? Um, is it the concealer, Peggy, that you ordered, or the foundation? I'll be honest, I've mixed the foundation with other brands before, nothing happened, but I slowly like it. I just wear it on its own because I don't need to mix it. Both. If it's slightly light, you do know that you have the opportunity to return the product and exchange it for a shade that matches you closer than what you ordered. So if you want, I would reach out to customer service and let them know that you want to exchange it for something that matches your skin tone more. Like I said, concealer, you want it to be a shade to 2 shades lighter, depending on your preference. If you're someone who likes to wear glam a lot, like more glam looks, then you want it to be 2 shades lighter. But if you're someone more subtle, I would go for a shade lighter. Um, does the concealer cover melasma up well? It does, and it's buildable. I personally do have a lot of darkness around my mouth. It's like I can't sit here and take my makeup off, but if you guys were to see me without makeup, I do have people always like, they notice that there's a lot of darkness under my eyes. It is buildable and it does cover, it's like full coverage. I'll swatch it on the back of my hand just to show you. And that's just one swipe. So imagine if you were to put two on, it does cover up really well. The perfect nude lip color is a color. Okay, so sorry, Natasha. I'm sorry, that's a very inappropriate comment. What is the concealer shade? The one that I used is 08, so it's the number 08. But if you haven't tried it, if you go on the website, you will be able to color match using the quiz for the foundation and the concealer. As far as they're not similar. I don't think they're similar in numbers because this is 105 and this is just 08. So I would definitely take the quiz and see what it recommends to you. And again, you guys can try it before you actually fully buy it. So you'll get the product, test it out. And if it works for you, great. If the color is good, you keep it. If not, you can always exchange it for a color that would match you a little bit better. Does anybody else have any questions so far? What's your opinion of sparkly eyeshadow on women over 50? I'm 54. That's actually a really good question because I do have a lot of, like, for me and my family alone, like a lot of my older aunts, they love wearing sparkle. The one thing about sparkle eyeshadow or anything that sparkles or highlights or glistens, keep in mind if there's any kind of texture on your eyelids or on your skin, what it does is it accentuates and enhances it. So if you have any kind of lines or anything on your eyelids, I would avoid any sparkle and I would go for matte. But if you have really good skin and you don't mind wearing the sparkle, then go for it. As far as your age, who cares what age you are? You wear whatever you feel good in. That's kind of my opinion. But if you're asking as far as like skin and texture, it does enhance texture. So if you wear it and you feel like, you know what, it doesn't really look good on me, that's probably like, if you have any texture in the skin. Like for me, I don't always wear a lot of highlight on my face depending on how my skin is doing. If I have dry spots and texture, I avoid anything sparkly. But there's nothing wrong with wearing sparkles just because you're 54. You do what you feel good in. Can you do a giveaway? What are your favorite eyelashes? I have, as far as eyelashes, there's so many different ones that I try. There's not necessarily like ones that I can really say like are my favorite, but I will say this, my natural lashes are, just because it's just so much easier. That I don't have to remove or anything, but and I like to layer them with the mascara. So what's your favorite nails? Your makeup is so cute. Thank you so much. Maureen, what my favorite nails are? Whatever I'm in the mood for. I don't really like have a particular nail that I like. But yeah, do you guys have any more questions for me? We have a little bit more time and I'd love to just kind of answer anything that you guys might want to know. Let's see. Did I skip any questions? No. What do the liquid lipsticks feel like? Oh, good question. The liquid lipsticks are actually really, really nice. I like them because they're very lightweight. I don't typically go for liquid lipsticks because they tend to be like a thick consistency. But when I tried out the ones from Il Makiage, I actually fell in love with the formula because it's very lightweight. So when you apply it on, it doesn't create like any lines or like it doesn't get like that like flaky line in the mouth over time. What blush shade do you use? This is my favorite, Poker Face. It works really well on warm skin tones like myself. It works well on pretty much anyone. I've tried it on different people. Like I've tried it on my friends and family, but this is just literally my favorite. I can wear this without any foundation on either. Let's see. Oh, you're welcome. No problem. Thank you. Hypoallergenic eyeliner available. To be honest with you, I'm not sure. If you want to check online just to see, if I can't tell you if it's hypoallergenic or not, just because I'm not familiar with whether it is or not. So if you want to take a look online to see, it's important to read the ingredients. If there, if you have any allergies or any irritation to certain things, but I'm not sure. I'm close to 60 years young. I love that. and never found the correct shade of foundation until purchasing maquillage. This is the best foundation concealer for me, and the primer is great too. You know, it's interesting that you say that, Trish, because I can say the same. I've always had to buy two different foundations to color match myself just because my skin is really weird. Like I have an olive undertone, but for some reason people always want to tell me that I'm warm. Am I warm? Yes, but I'm more olive than anything. This was the first foundation that I've tried that I only used one color. I don't need to mix shades, and it blends in right in with my skin, and it wears really nicely. And the concealer as well. I don't think I've ever been obsessed with a foundation the way I am with this. And I'm not saying this because I'm on here or anything, but I just genuinely do love the foundation. I recommend it to everyone that I talk to. But and as far as the color matching, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this quiz online and I'm gonna see how good this is. And when I did, I was very surprised. I was excited too because I was like, wait, foundation is like so hard to match for me just because of the way my undertones are and things like that. But that quiz, like literally a few questions, and I got the perfect shade. I love your nails. Thank you so much. I am not a nail artist. I'm a makeup artist, but thank you so much. Does anybody else have any more questions for me before I get off? Let's see. If you guys haven't tried the foundation or the concealer, I definitely recommend it. And again, you guys can try it out before you buy it. So you have about 45 days before you can, if you don't like it, you can return it or whatever the case may be. But I guarantee you that you will love it. Did you take the Power Match quiz? Yes, I did. I did the quiz for both the concealer and the foundation. And when I tell you I was very pleasantly surprised, I was just because, again, I'm like very skeptical. I'm the kind of person that I like to see things in person and figure it out, especially because my skin tone, my undertone is very it's very olive. And finding a foundation that matches perfectly is always difficult for me. So when I took the quiz and I got it in the mail, I was like, whoa, like this literally just looks like my skin. Do you guys have any more questions? We just have a few more minutes, so I want to give you guys the opportunity to ask if you guys have any questions. If not, if there's any products that I use that you want to know more about today or any techniques or anything, while you guys have me. I want me to do your makeup one day. Thank you. Can you show the primer you use? Yes. This is the No Filter Poreless Base Primer. I'm obsessed with this just because, with age, as we get younger, our pores tend to get larger and they open up more. And so this has been like my savior with my pores, just because as I got a little bit older, I noticed they tend to open up more and they just like anything that I put on them, they just show. So ever since I started using this, and I'll show you guys what this is what the formula looks like. It's really nice and velvety and it blurs out. It's very blurring. So one of my favorites, and I literally just kind of put it in the center of my face and I focus it around my mouth as well because I do get a lot of texture from my eczema. Let's see. Do you use liquid liner or powder? It depends on my mood, to be honest with you. I used to be a huge liquid liner. I prefer gel more than anything, but I used to do the wing a lot and then I kind of got over it. So now I'm more just like a pencil liner kind of girl. I'm excited to get the email after class. Awesome. I'm excited for you guys. If you haven't tried some of the products that I've used, I highly recommend. If you guys haven't tried eyeshadows from this brand, from Il Maquillage, I'm huge on their eyeshadows just because they wear so nicely. And I'll be honest with you guys, sometimes with this palette, I use my fingers. I don't even use brushes. I just dip into it and I tap it into my eyelids and it comes out so pretty. But yes, make sure you guys check your emails after class and you'll get a complete list of the products that I used today. If you are interested in buying any of them, that way you can see what I used and what's on the list. Does anybody have any questions anymore before I'm off of this? Love this class. Thank you. You're so welcome, Emily. I hope you guys were able to learn something new. I love their eyeshadow. I purchased them from Ipsy. Yeah, the eyeshadows are amazing. I don't think you guys understand. They're so velvety and just so true to color. Thank you for your help. Of course, anytime. All right. So It was nice chatting with you guys, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's class. I hope you got something out of it and you learned just a little something so that you guys can take it and utilize all the tips that I gave you. Can you teach me how to do makeup? All right, well, you guys have a good night and good evening or good afternoon, wherever you guys are in the world. And it was really nice hanging out with you guys for today, and I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. So